I know it's ridiculous that it's taking me so long on this thing. I've been planning to do this for, gosh, a week, 2 weeks? I'm not sure exactly when we received this. So this is another box of Bosc pears. It's a very small box, just 7 pears. We're going to try these with this little chopper slicer thing and see how they do with cubes, and maybe even sprinkle on a little bit of cinnamon on these. So I'm going to just cut the stem end off a little bit and then cut it right down the middle. So I'm trying to cut right through the blossom end and through the stem end as close as I can. Okay, well, and this one has a little bit of, might have froze. So anyway, this is going to get scooped out. And so this is definitely a pretty soft pear now. I should have done them, like I said, a week ago. If I do it this way, it will have, well, doesn't quite fit, but then they'd have long pieces. So I think I'm going to cut it again. So I'll cut a little bit off where it's thinner and just push that right through. This other part that's thicker, I'm going to go ahead and cut it maybe twice and then stack those up and put those in. Oh, let's give this a try for this little guy. Okay, right through. All right, those look good. That's the kind of pieces I want. Then I'll put them in the water that has the ascorbic acid in it, the vitamin C powder, to help keep them looking fresh. Okay, I'll do the same thing on this.
Yeehaw!
So we'll just get all the pears done like that and see how they turn out. Then we'll get them on a tray and then pre-freeze them. I'll cut right through the seed on that one. So I like using this scoop because the cores on pears are usually pretty small and I don't want to waste a lot of the pear. So I'm just scooping out the seed area and the blossom end. Go ahead and do both of those. So we've got all the little pear. Again, these are Bosc pears. And I decided I would cube these because I think these would be good in things. I was going to mention, this is the ascorbic acid, the vitamin C that we're using. I just buy this particular one. It's worked well for us. I mean, but how would I know the difference? So I'm using the same parchment that I used on the last pears. I just wiped it all off, and now we'll drain these out and get them on the tray. Okay, let's get those on there. As you've seen on some of the other videos, I used to drill into the frozen blocks of food so that I can insert the thermometer so I can know what the temperature is inside the block of food. And then a viewer had a great suggestion about, instead of drilling in the food, adding a stainless steel rod in and then pulling that out before I put it in the freeze dryer and switching it out for the thermometer. And the question came up, well, why not just put thermometers in? Well, usually we're freezing them in those 7x7 blocks, and we have had up to, 150 of those blocks in the freezer, and we'd never know which ones are going to go in which tray, so we might need 150 thermometers. With these, we can freeze it in there and then just pull them out and leave that whole, and these are far less expensive than the thermometers. Anyway, this will go into the freezer now for pre-freezing, and hopefully we can get this batch going in a few hours, or an hour or so. We'll get it down there. Oh, I was going to sprinkle a little bit of cinnamon on them. Oh well, I can still do that right there. Okay, this isn't what I was planning. I was planning on kind of mixing them around, but shake it in the whole bowl, but I forgot. So I'll just add a very small touch. Some of them will have a bit of cinnamon, and some of them won't. That'll have to do. Okay, into the freezer with these. We're starting that batch of Bosc that we were talking about last week, and I've had it in the freezer except for the last bit of Bosc, one tray, which I prepped yesterday. So it's been in the freezer since yesterday, and now we're going to get it into the machine and transfer the other Bosc that we put on cookie sheets onto the trays and put them in there. My machine has been pre-cooling for about an hour. The thermometer along the side says that it's -30, and the machine display says that it's 4 degrees. But again, the display temperature is taken from a thermistor in the back of the second tray up, and it's not as cold there yet. So let's get the pears out of the freezer and onto the trays and get them in there. These are frozen pears, so I am going to put the gloves on so I don't freeze my hands. And some of the pears will be a little bit sticky because of the sugars and things on them. We'll get those over here in just a second. We've got the trays. They were pre-freezing in the freezer, getting them nice and cold, and all of the pears, of course, were in there freezing. In our basement area where we have the freeze dryer, the freezers are on the other side of the room, and we've got the freeze dryer over here, and we use this little cart for wheeling all the trays around, and then we have the bagging cart also. So now it's been about an hour and a quarter, and it says that the rack temperature is -5, and the thermometer along the side says about -34 now, so it's dropping quite nicely. Now get those in, and I'm going to put tray 1, I'm actually putting in the second spot because it's so heavy. These middle 2 tend to dry a little bit faster, so I'm putting the lighter 2 trays on the outside and the heavier 2 on the inside this time.
Taxi!
Now I want to make sure I have a ring all the way around this seal, and I don't right now at this time, and usually I have been. So I'm going to use my little frosting spatula and just pull that seal ever so slightly out till I have that ring around there, so I know I won't have any air leak or ice build up around that seal all the way around there. Now I shouldn't have to worry about any of vacuum leaks or anything in there. Okay, so thanks a lot. See you in a couple of days. It's about 9 o'clock at night, 2 days after we started these. I started these on the last live stream video that went horribly off the rails with the video quality. It was so bad that I unlisted it, and hopefully you never have to see it because it would be an affront to your eyes. And thanks to the kind people that left comments saying, well, it wasn't too bad, I still learned something from the audio. Yeah, because you can see the video on half of it. Anyway, it's 9 o'clock at night. This was supposed to be taken out of there something like 8 or 9 hours ago, but I kept adding time because today's Monday, and that's the day I go volunteer at the local range, and so I just kept adding time. So I added a bunch of time so that it'd be done, or so that it would still be running when I came back. Well, I still wasn't ready to add or to finish it, so I added more time, and then it ran out while I was doing some other stuff, so I added more time, and I just added another half hour now so it wouldn't stop, and now we're down to the last 17 and a half minutes. And with my older machine, as I've mentioned before, the last 15 minutes, the heaters turn off and it starts getting cold. I did find that missing thermometer that was supposed to be in the one tray. It was on the floor over there, but I didn't find it until long after I decided to put a different thermometer in there before I let it go to the vacuum cycle. Anyway, so I've got thermometers in the two middle trays. They both say 120 degrees, and they've both said 120 degrees for like 8 hours. So it's probably done already, and now we'll start the dry check. I should have started the dry check hours ago, but I was planning on holding off so that we could live stream it. I'm not going to live stream down here until I can figure out what went wrong with the Wi-Fi, because it was just a disaster. Gonna figure out what's up before we do that again. I might still do a rehydration because I can do it upstairs closer to where the main signal is, and everything should be good. So, going to bypass the rest of this time. Oh, and right now it says that the pressure is 131, and it says that the temperature is 122, which when it's really, really done, they tend to match the thermometers and the display. But earlier on, the temperature on the display might read 120, and the thermometers in the food might read 0 or -20. It just depends on what part is dry and what parts are still wet. So we'll bypass the rest of that. And I'll open the drain valve. Yeah, and I'd really like to do them again, at least some of them live, because answering the questions makes it a lot more interesting, at least for me. Okay, then we'll get this open. Yeah. I've got the extra fans turned off so I don't get any air blowing under there, and we'll get them checked. Okay, so starting with tray 1, those cubes, and those look really nice. Okay, so now 965, and I'm not sure I'm going to rotate the trays because this was still the biggest quantity, and I want that in the warmest spot. So I'm going to go ahead and just leave it there because we'd already put the heaviest 2 in the middle. Okay, and then tray 2, 877. Some of these did shrink down, and I think it's because of the 6-hour freeze time. I don't think I gave it quite enough, and I meant to add a little bit more, but by the time I remembered to come down here and check it, it had started a couple hours earlier. Okay, and some of the really ripe pears tend to shrink a little bit. I think it's because it's so sugary. I should probably turn down the heater temperature when I have very ripe things. 858, and tray 4. And again, I'm not going to rotate these this time, and I almost always do, but this time I do have the 2 center ones are so much heavier. 938. Yeah, this one started out 300 grams heavier than tray 3. This one started out about 450 grams heavier than this one. Okay. And again, the disc doesn't really matter at all when we're going to restart it right away. It's only if we don't get back to it right away. So I'll close the drain valve. So we'll restart it. More dry time. Close the drain valve. Did. Continue. It's going to tell me that the pump needs cooling, but I'm not worried about it because the fan on it. And I'm going to restart. And the newer machines, the newer vacuum pumps are so much better than this, it's not really the same issue anyway. We'll come back in 2 hours and double check this to make sure it was dry. If it was dry, then we'll bag them. Here's the data so far. I've got the date that it went into the machine, which batch number, and what it is, and then the weights, the gross weight before, and then the weight of the trays and paper. Subtract those out. I have the net weight before, which is 3,786 grams, or about 8.35 pounds. Now I've just put these dry check weights, which their only value is to check it against the time or the weights 2 hours from now, or 3 or 4, depending on how much you're giving it. For these, we're going to give it 2. For some things, we would give it 3 or 4 if we really think it's resistive to giving up the moisture, and if it hadn't been so long already. Okay, we'll be back in 2 hours and check it. Well, it's about 2 hours and 8 minutes later. Now let's get them out and check them. Yeah, so without further ado, we'll bypass that last couple of minutes, get the drain valve opened, and we'll see what we have now. So starting with tray 1 again. Okay, well, I've got tray 1. Oh, there it is. I looked at the wrong one on here and I thought it had changed a lot. I looked at tray 2 on here. Okay, so 965, so no change. And in my little sheet, I'm just writing NC for no change. Tray 2. And these are the ones I would think would be more likely to have a problem. Okay, no change, just because they're so thick, but they've had a lot of extra time. They shouldn't have an issue. Tray 3, and again, no change. 858, and tray 4, and no change. We'll get this turned off with no defrost, and certainly make it quieter in here. And then I won't feel like I am yelling all the time. And that's probably because I'm yelling all the time. And these are warm right now. There's a lot of warmth coming off of those. We'll come back in just a second. I'm going to move these out of the way to keep any moisture from coming out of that machine and getting onto those. I mentioned it before about how my machine turns off the heaters in the last 15 minutes. And I kind of like that for some of the sugary type fruits and things. I like to take them out while they're still pretty warm, but on some things it's nice to let them cool down a little bit, like marshmallows, so that they kind of get hard again as they get cold. But I don't want sugary things to get down anywhere close to room temperature, because I don't want moisture to come into them. And if I keep them a little warm, it seems to make sure that they stay dry till they're bagged. I'll get the defrost fan into place, and we'll get that started as soon as we're out of the way from here. And it's not a huge water batch, so it won't take too long to defrost. As I mentioned before, it's been running for a lot of hours today after it was probably finished, because I had other things to do, so I just kept it running. And that way, if there was any moisture left, I knew it should be done before I get to it. Well, it shows 55¼ hours. Well, I know it was done a long time ago. We've got proof that it was done 2 hours ago, 2¼ hours ago. So we've got proof that it was done at 53 hours because we just did that dry check for 2¼ hours. It didn't lose any weight, so we know it was dry 2¼ hours ago. So we can't say how long it did take to freeze dry. We just know that it was done before 53 hours. I suspect it was 10 or 15 hours ago, but I was busy doing other things and couldn't get to it, so I can't prove that. If we look at the last batch of pears that was sliced thick also, it was finished before 48 hours. And I suspect strongly that this was done well before 48 hours also. I'm going to put down that it was 53 hours because that's the time that we know. Okay, and then the power usage. So this batch took less than 33.99 kilowatt hours, considerably less in real life because it was done a while ago. We'll reset that and get that ready for the next batch. All right, we've got 2 trays of Bosc and 2 trays of Comice, basically. We'll get the final weights on the ones with the thermometers, and then we can get them bagged. So let's get the final weights. We'll get the thermometer out and find out what the whole tray weighs now with the paper, and then we'll do the subtraction. So 957, 957. And tray 2, of course, is just the original weights now. Yeah, so 877. So just the same as it showed before, of course. 858. And again, it's the weight we had over at the machine. And 929. So what we have now is we've got all the data from that batch. We've got the start date, the batch number, what it was, and actually I need to adjust that because it's half Comice. And then we've got the trays, and I'll write which ones were Comice, which ones were Bosc. So I've got Bosc and Comice pears, got them separated. Now we'll get the weights, and I will go ahead and separate these two out to see if they're different. Because it's a mixed batch, there's a lot more calculations involved than I would normally do. And you don't have to do any of this if you don't want to. This is because I want to be able to use it as a pound of fruit later. What was a pound of Bosc now is approximately 77 grams of Bosc pears. I want to be able to bag it with about 77 grams in the bag so that I know it was a pound before and that it needs X amount of water. And I'll know that the Comice needs about 381 grams of water put back in with that 73 grams of pears to equal a pound. And the Bosc needs about 376.6 grams of water along with the 77 grams of pears to equal that pound again. And so you don't have to do that. For one thing, you can eat these dry. They're really good. And with most fruits and vegetables, you can just put water in them. They'll soak up what they need, and it's not a big problem. Where the calculations for water seem more important to me is sauces, soups, stews, things like that, or if I'm going to put it into something. So if I want to make muffins or something and put the water in the batter, well then I need to know how much water to put in it so that it will have enough to soak the water out of it without leaving the batter dry or too runny. That's why I do it. And because I'm me, normal people don't have to do all of this every time. We'll go print some labels and be right back with them. I've got my bags labeled now. I've got the batch number up here. In case this label fails, I can use that batch number to refer back to my notes. I put all of my notes in a 3-ring binder so that I've got them long term. And of course I could scan them or some other high-tech thing, but I just keep them in a binder. I can look back and see what I have. And then on the tag, I've got all the information that I wanted to add for that. So again, the batch number, the date that it was started in the freeze dryer, what it is, the weight before it is dried, the weight that how much water needs to be added to it. And I put it all, and I've got a mix of pounds and grams and all kinds of things, because as long as you got a scale, to me it doesn't really matter what the unit is, because it works out just fine. You know, you just use the measuring device you have. So zero out the scale with the bag on it, and then we can fill them up. And I think I forget to mention this a lot. These are a 7mm Mylar bag with the gusseted bottoms. I really like that because they stand up for one thing, and they seem to hold a decent amount. Like the 1 quart kind of holds a quart. And I still haven't added the taller sides on this scoop. And it still needs it. So I should probably break these apart a bit. They're kind of stuck together because of all the sugars. A little bit more because we need about 77 for the Bosc. Just over. Okay, so that was about a pound of pears. Now it's about 77 grams, which is, I think, about 2 ounces, a little over 2 ounces. So it's lost a great deal of the weight. And I'm going to be slightly short on the cubed, and I'm just going to use a few of the slices to go with it. And I'll just take some of the smaller pieces off of here since it says cubed and I don't want to have to relabel it. I'll just use some of the little pieces.
Yeehaw!
Because hopefully I still have about 2 pounds left in here. I've calculated it out right. Okay. And then the rest of this will split into 2 more bags, and they'll actually be probably just slightly less than a pound. And as I said, I'll get these 2 even, so we'll get these loaded first. And then we'll try to even them out. 75 and a half, 75 and a half. I'll break this one in half, put half in each. So it's pretty close. And then the same thing for the Comice pears, except for they're quite a bit bigger. And one of these bags is labeled for a 1/3 pound. Now in these, we only need about 73 grams to get to the pound. Oh, almost right on. That's going to be tough to get closer. Oh, well, it's almost exactly, it's less than 1 gram. Even a small piece like that puts it over. So we'll check it first. See how close we can get with these others. We should have enough for another pound and then a 1/3 of a pound. And of course, I should have used a smaller bag. Let's go with a smaller piece. There we go. And this should be about a 1/3 of that, so that should be it. As usual, I'm using the 300 cc oxygen absorbers. This bag has 4 left in it, so I'm going to use that up first. So of course this is one that I used some out of earlier and had 4 left. You can see the little oxygen sensor that's in there has turned back to the pink or salmon color from that dark bluish color. As soon as I open it, it's going to turn back to this. So I've thought about putting these inside the bag so then I'd be able to tell if it was working. There's no oxygen in there. But the problem is you can't find this in the bag fast enough to see if it worked because these change so fast you'll never have a chance to get it out of the bag. If you're using a clear front bag, you could see it, but the clear front bags don't keep the oxygen out as well anyway. So the ones that I have, at least, I would never consider for long-term storage. Anyway, we'll open this up and see that. So I even thought about taping it right on the inside. That way I could open it real quick, put a note on the outside that says it's there, open it real quick and look. But if you watch this, you'll see that even that would be difficult. So cut the top off, you go to open it up, and you get it out, and it changes. It's done already. It would be hard to get to there and see it before it's already changed. It might be possible if you put it in a specific location and you're really getting ready to look for it. But I think I probably couldn't do it and make it work before it was already changed. So I'm closing these just by grabbing the 2 ends and pulling. If I had a nitrogen system to inject in here, I would puff these up like a balloon because of the sugary fruit to make sure it doesn't collapse and squish them and cause them to stick. But I don't, and I'm certainly not going to push out any of the extra air on these. The oxygen absorbers will take care of the 21% that's oxygen in there. And it won't squish it quite as badly because I didn't get rid of that little bit of extra at the top. Okay, so I still need 5 more. So I'm going to relabel this one for 5. We'll get that open, and again, I want to see that. It's still pretty closed. And I just open it up and it's done. It seems like after it's been exposed, it's slower the second time, but that first time it's so fast. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And of course, I don't like it when the number, oh, I forgot to put those in. Doggone it. Well, I'll get those in just a second. I don't like it when the numbers won't match, either high or low. Occasionally you'll have one that has 9 or one that has 11. And either case, it makes me go back and count all the ones that are in the bags to make sure that I didn't miss one. This is the one that's only 1/3 of a pound. It's more like a snack. The oxygen absorbers I got when I first started freeze drying seemed to take maybe the next day before they really started sucking down that oxygen. These newer ones seem to go much quicker. In just a few hours, this will be pretty well oxygen free inside there. With those all closed and an oxygen absorber, we'll get them sealed. I think it's been quite a while since I mentioned that I'm using an Impact brand heat sealer. The first sealer that Harvest Right sent was an Impact one for me. My sister's is a Harvest Right branded one. After we changed the 8mm wide seal strip to a 5mm, it works fine. But at first it did not work at all. And her spring is much stronger on hers. Okay, so I'm sealing high up on the bag to leave myself room for 2 or 3 more tries in case I mess up. And I've seen pictures of a couple of bags that had wrinkles in here, and I don't know exactly why that is or how that happens. And they said that they've tried various temperatures on it and it didn't seem to solve the problem. So obviously it doesn't seem to be temperature. So I don't know why. Maybe the amount of pressure on it, because this has springs under here pushing that seal bar down against there, and maybe if that's too weak, it can shrink while it's heating or right after. I don't know. I'm just speculating because I haven't seen that in person. What might be an interesting thing to do would be to put a scale on it and find out how much pressure it takes to activate the bar and see if there's a relationship there between the amount of pressure and the problem. This isn't the right kind of scale, I realize that, but just to make it touch, it's taking 1,300 grams. I could put that on pounds and ounces. Now to activate it, I have to push harder. Okay, about 2 kilos, so a little over 4 pounds, 4.5 pounds. And when I'm pressing it all the way down, which is what I do, yeah, so I'm doing about 7 pounds of pressure to make this go. I'm going to check my sister's. As you saw, with mine it takes about 7 pounds. My sister's, I don't know, because this only goes to about 11 pounds, and it's beyond that before hers goes. If anything, I would think a lighter spring would be more likely to cause that kind of issue, but I don't know. I haven't seen it, so I don't really have an understanding of it. Okay, this bag weighs 103 grams right now. If it starts getting heavier, I'll know there's something wrong with this bag because moisture, so weight, is getting into it. So it's just another check that I can use to check to see if the bags are okay still as far as moisture goes. If I've done a poor job and they're not dry all the way, that won't help any. This only tells me, is it going bad now? Not did I do a good job. 103. These bags are ready for storage. And on my notes, I will add on here that I did 9 quart bags. So that gives me the bag usage. And then on the storage portion of it, the part that we're going to enter into the computer, I'll note that there's 5 quart bags of Bosc and 4 quart Comice. And the Bosc are 1 pound each. And the Comice are 3 at 1 pound and 1 at 1/3 pound. That way we'll have an inventory of where these end up, and we'll be able to locate them later. So hopefully I can figure out the Wi-Fi thing and we can do something with live streams. I know I can do rehydration with live stream because I could do that upstairs and then we could discuss that as it goes. Some of the rehydration is fast, some of it's slow. We could try that out and see how it goes. That should be all of the Comice and Bosc until probably next fall, or late next fall for pears. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching, and hopefully we can do more of the live stream type things, because I really enjoyed being able to answer questions and see them, because then as I answer them, I think it works better because I can talk about it, and then if I didn't understand it, you can chime in again and go, yeah, you didn't get that right, you wasn't thinking of what I was thinking, try again. So again, thanks for watching, see you on the next one.